So actually putting the triad into use. Now that you've learned a little bit about CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, let's look at actually using it to do something. It's not just an interesting thought experiment, although it is absolutely a thought experiment, but measuring actually solutions on it. So what I'll typically do is if I'm looking at a security problem, a security solution, there are definitely different models, but I think the one that fits the best here is actually considering a need, a security need, doing some kind of needs analysis. If I'm asking questions of a database administrator, what kind of security do you need? Or asking an online, let's say a cloud security company, what kind of stuff do you provide, or what kind of features do you need in a security solution? I'll typically ask these three. What kind of confidentiality needs do you have? Do you need to protect sensitive data? How strongly do you need to protect sensitive data? How critical is confidentiality to a solution? Some solutions require an enormous amount of confidentiality. Some solutions are all about protecting sensitive data against being compromised. That's great. But you'd be surprised how often when you ask that question around security needs that someone says, yeah, I mean, it's important, but it's not critical. It's not a main factor here. Okay, cool. So I'll tend to map out on this. I'll actually make a point. I'll actually put a little bit of a dot here and indicate where on the confidentiality range I actually need something. Then I'll ask the same kind of question around integrity. What about data integrity? Usually there's some relationship, not a strong relationship, but a weak relationship between the confidentiality and integrity needs. So how important is it that data is protected for integrity? And the question will usually be asked right back, what do you mean? They're the same thing. Well, actually, they're not. We're talking about eavesdropping or disclosure of sensitive data versus changing data in place, maybe making the data look like your CEO changed it, but actually it was replaced by some random employee. Oh, okay, that might have some impact on our security. That might actually be a need that we have. We kind of thought about it as the same thing. Well, no, they're not actually the same thing. Remember the Amazon or the website in general. Most websites have a very, very strong need for integrity, but not as much of a need for confidentiality. So oftentimes the need for integrity will be somewhere up here, kind of a little bit further away from strong integrity needs. And then third, I'll ask about availability. How critical is it that the system is up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, always available in all locations to all employees or all authorized employees or all customers or whatever the heck the solution is? And again, you might get the initial answer of, well, from the owner or from the business manager, well, it always has to be available. Everything always has to be available. Well, what was the business impact if that system went down for an hour or a day or a week? Well, it might be critical or it might not be critical. So oftentimes you'll find out that availability is not a key factor, or it might be the most important factor. Let's assume in this case that availability is absolutely crucial. So I'll actually plot a point very, very close to the availability side of the triad. And I'll look at these three. I'll sit back for a moment. Again, this is a modeling tool, security modeling tool, kind of a thought experiment in a way. I'll look at these three and consider confidentiality. How important or critical of a need is it for this security solution, or in this security space, rather? Integrity, how important or not important is it? How available does this need to be, this asset or resource need to be or not be? All three of these things together help me decide what kind of solution often I'm going to put in place. So for example, high on the confidentiality mark will mean I probably need some very strong cryptography or some very strong key management. I might need, if it's a remote access solution or remote data access, I might need exceptionally strong VPN or IPsec tunnels. I might need 802.1x kind of solutions. Those are what would lead here. However, if confidentiality is not as critical, I might be able to get away with something that's a little more performant. I might spec out DESX or triple DES crypto, or maybe even AES 128 crypto. I might spec out something a little bit weaker on the VPN side or not as stringent. Or actually, I'll leave this as a question mark. So confidentiality, maybe I need it, maybe I don't need it. It's an option. Integrity. Obviously, in this case, I don't need to worry terribly much about integrity. This is not a concern in the security space during this needs analysis phase. So I don't have to worry so much about hashing every bit of data or hashing every transaction or getting heavy-duty two-factor, three-factor authentication to prove that an individual or an entity made a change or deleted some stuff. Not as much of a factor. It's great. So I'll just go ahead and deprecate that a little bit. Like thus. That's deprecating. Availability over here on the other side is the highest component. It's the most important component. This is really, really common in websites where integrity is kind of important but not critical, and availability is exceptionally important. So this is the kind of scenario where I'm going to recommend a security solution that actually provides an exceptionally high level of availability. We're going to talk about things like disaster recovery, online backups, clustering. We're going to talk about how to preserve the confidentiality and integrity needs within the availability need. But this being the strongest, this is going to be a bit of the key decision point or the key factor in actually modeling out a security solution. This is how I actually model when I do needs analysis for security problems in the first place. This is where I start. Is this a comprehensive, complete, and thorough analysis of security needs and a way to plot out exact specific security solutions and put a dollar figure next to them, build an entire spreadsheet? No, of course it's not. This is just back of a napkin, piece of paper, in a meeting, notepad kind of thing that I'll do, but it helps me think about what are the right things to ask about? What are the right questions to ask? It reminds me, I can always remember CIA because, I'm paranoid that way. It's written across the top of my tinfoil Napoleon-style hat. I remember confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and when I'm asking about security solutions or helping plan security solutions, the first thing I'll do is try to understand the needs. Understanding the needs is key. And remembering CIA is fairly easy. Oftentimes, a lot of security professionals will just ask about confidentiality. Does the data need to be secure? Does the data need to be protected? Or do the transactions need to be secured? SSL kind of thing, TLS, ooh. But that's not the only question. And if you ask just that question, then you fail. Then you don't get the complete security picture, and you might wind up recommending the wrong solution. So the CIA triad is a great thing to try to remember or remind you of what questions to ask, what aspects to think about before you even move into a needs analysis or planning phase.